everybody, and welcome to JTV. I am really excited about our guest today. We are joined by the online powerhouse that is Hananya Naftali. Hananya is a passionate Israel advocate online. His videos have been seen by millions and millions of people. He's built an incredible online social media presence. But actually, before that, or perhaps as he started doing this, he was a soldier in the IDF. He fought Hamas in Gaza. He was also a combat medic, treating both Palestinians and Syrians. And since 2018, he has actually been managing social media for the former Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. So, Hananya, really delighted that you're joining us today from Israel. Thank you so much for joining us on JTV.
It's awesome to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for your time. So, I want to first understand your journey to becoming such a sort of popular Israel activist. Just take us on your journey to how this all happened.
Well, to try to sum it up in less than 2 hours of a lecture, I will say that I joined the army when I turned 18. I served in the Armored Corps, and right after I finished my advanced trainings and became an actual combatant, I was sent to the Gaza Strip because the protective edge operation has begun. And I was sent into the Gaza Strip to fight Hamas. Our mission was to destroy their tunnels, to destroy Hamas targets with the tanks. And I was really angry. I was really angry at that time, and it's not because I was inside the Gaza Strip, because I was very, we knew what we were doing there. We knew our mission. But what really made me angry is when we came back to Israel from the Gaza Strip, I would open my phone, call my parents, say that I'm doing okay, that everything is fine. But I would also read the news. I would open CNN, BBC, all these mainstream media outlets. And I saw them blaming us, the soldiers that were on the ground inside the Gaza Strip, protecting the lives of civilians. And they were saying that we're committing atrocities, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and whatnot. And it made me really angry, because before we entered the Gaza Strip, they would tell us that you have to be very strict about preserving human life, about not harming innocent people, because you have to understand that the Gaza Strip is a very densely populated area with approximately 2 million people in one tiny place. So we did everything in our power to preserve human life and to not hurt Palestinians, innocent Palestinians, while the mainstream media would blame us. So I told myself that, if we go back and after this operation, if everything will be fine and I'll come out of the Gaza Strip alive, safe and sound, I will start and advocate for Israel. I will start and tell the truth about Israel, because, a lot of people don't know that. But when you join the Israeli army, you are not given a weapon first. You are given a small booklet that is teaching you how to behave like a human being. They teach you the codes of ethics of the Israeli army. And only after you finished learning the values of the Israeli army, the values of preserving human life, then you are taught how to defend your country. And a lot of people don't know that. So I told myself that I will learn English. Now it's better than it used to be. And I will learn how to edit videos. I will start and film and tell about my experiences as an Israeli, as a soldier, as someone that lives in Israel and wants peace more than anything. So that's how I started.
Wow, that's amazing. That's very admirable. You've clearly had the most incredible success in terms of your video content, the amount of people you reach across a wide variety of social media platforms. What do you think are some of the keys to your online success? What are the keys to making a video that is impactful, gets across a message succinctly, but also in a way that can inspire others to want to like, comment, share, and spread the word?
I think that the key here is to simply tell a story, to not try uh, to make people like you, to not try to please your viewers, but to simply tell the story as it is. And because nowadays in the world of technology and in the world of Zoom calls and cameras, people notice when you tell the truth. People notice when you just want to get views, or if you just are trying to please the audience by saying whatever they want to hear. They notice that. But when you focus on telling the truth, telling the story, and when you're passionate about it, then people do notice that. So I do think that the key to success on social media, and obviously there's more to grow, is to tell a story. And as it is, when I started to advocate for Israel, I didn't have the perfect camera. I just had a small camcorder that I got from my 17th birthday, I think. But I did have interesting stories to tell. So that's why I think that my beginning was good. It's not because I had the best equipment, but it is because I was passionate about something. So I do think that people that want to advocate for Israel and don't know how to do it, or don't think that they have the best equipment, you don't need that. We all have this, smartphone. That's good enough. Uh, that's what I would say the recipe for success on social media, to be genuine and to not try to fake anything, because it's very noticeable.
Wow, I think that's great advice. And as mentioned at the start, a few years ago, you were uh, asked or invited to work for Prime Minister Netanyahu. How did that come about? And can you tell us about your work with him?
Well, Ollie, you're asking me to talk about national secrets, so no, I'm joking. Uh, Actually, it's really interesting because they say about us Israelis, and again, I'm born and raised Israeli. So they say that we Israelis have the chutzpah. We are pushing forward, and we're very straightforward, and that's how it came to be. Because my social media was growing. I think I was at around 300,000 followers on Facebook, and I told myself, hey, I do want to make a video, an interview with the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and I reached out to one of his advisors, and I said, hey, my name is Hananya. I am advocating for Israel, and I would really love to speak to the Prime Minister and ask him some interesting questions, as he was the ambassador of Israel to the UN, and he advocated for Israel himself. So, I didn't really have any high expectations, but I got a reply, and it was actually on Facebook messages, and then the advisor said, hey, that's so interesting, because we were just talking about making a video with you. So it's a really funny coincidence that you contacted us. And then obviously it's the Prime Minister, so his schedule was very tight. So we had to wait a few months between our conversation to film the interview and until it really happened. But it happened. I brought all my equipment, as I normally film my videos by myself. So I brought all my equipment to his office. I thought I'm gonna have about 20 minutes or something. They told me, Hananya, you only have 2 minutes. Use them wisely. So I, ran to his office. Well, not really ran, but I entered the office. I actually saw him. It was my first time seeing him. So I entered, set up the camera. I was very, focused on getting it done. That I think I forgot my manners. So yeah, we just filmed it. It was really interesting. It was really interesting to talk to him about how to advocate for Israel. And even though he's very busy, he did find time to give me tips and to talk about Israel's history. And yeah, he actually gave me the advice an advice that I'll never forget, which is, it sounds silly, but it's just to tell the truth as it is, to not try to distort anything, because we don't have to lie. We don't have to come up with lies like our enemies do. We simply have to take the truth and put it out there. And yeah, so long story short, after this interview, uh, I got a call and they asked me to join Netanyahu's team. So I started to work on his team. I mean, can you say no to this kind of offer? And yeah, I started to work for him.
Wow. And that's been ongoing.
Yeah.
And so I saw that recently you put out a video in the aftermath of the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan. Very interesting, pointing out, and I think you did a video on this, but Netanyahu also wrote an article or a post about this, that several years ago, the Obama administration, John Kerry, who was Secretary of State, said to Netanyahu that our plan for an Afghanistan withdrawal, we want to replicate that with regard to what we want to see Israel doing in the West Bank. And Netanyahu, and I think you were reporting on this in your recent video, have been reflecting on that recently and saying, look what happens when you pull out, especially pulling out swiftly. It can often lead to give rise to extremism, as we saw actually in Gaza. Do you want to talk a bit about this and what's been Netanyahu and perhaps Israel's reflections more generally on the situation?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, first of all, it's really devastating to watch what's happening over there in Afghanistan, whether you're located in your comfortable home in the UK or in any other country in Europe, America, Israel. It's really horrible to see that. And, the fact that people's lives have changed in just one day. And I know that a lot of people are very upset with not just with the current leadership, Biden's leadership, but also with the Afghan army, because basically the Taliban didn't have to shoot their guns to take over the capital. They just walked. They walked in there, and yeah. So yeah, and it's really important to us Israelis and it should be very important to all of us in the West, because it's not just Afghanistan. It's a loss for the West versus the East that's rising. And it should concern us because everybody's watching what's happening right now. Iran is watching, North Korea is watching, Assad in Syria, our friends in Lebanon, Hezbollah, obviously not our friends. So it's really worrying to see that, because they take that as a loss for the United States and as a victory for them. And obviously, wherever the United States is abstained, the East is trying to fill the void and to be there. So it's really important that Western leaders will know how to respond to that, because their response and their decisions are going to determine the future of Western society, in my opinion, because they say that every 100 years there is a change of world superpower. And right now we are witnessing this war of dominance, that literally wherever the United States is abstained, the East is trying to fill the void. And it's not necessarily bad. In my personal opinion, we should support India in any case of this war of dominance, because India is a friend to the West. But regarding Kabul, regarding the situation over there right now, it is important to point out that although Israel does not have diplomatic relations with Afghanistan and never had, we do help. Actually, Israeli weapons were used by coalition forces to fight the Taliban, to hunt them down. So Israel did play a role in fighting the Taliban. An Israeli organization sent private flights to Kabul to help evacuate innocent Afghans. So even though Afghanistan is far, far away from us Israelis, we do care about them, and we do want to take a role in saving lives and making sure that the innocent will find refuge and that they will be safe. But the greater problem here is obviously not just Afghanistan. It's the fact that the terrorists won, and the West has lost this battle. That's how it is perceived, actually.
Yeah. And what were your specific reflections on what Netanyahu said recently about his reflections on John Kerry's words?
Oh, right. Well, I think that it's very interesting the fact that Netanyahu shared this personal perspective, and I do sound biased, but I think that it it just shows that he knew even before this happened. He anticipated what's going to happen in Afghanistan, and the fact that John Kerry thought that they could do the same thing with the Palestinian issue. It's just a huge problem, and a lot of people don't understand that it's not that simple that that it's Israel being the aggressor and the Palestinians that are the victims, because obviously there are victims on both sides. There are innocent Palestinians that are victims of Hamas. There are innocent Palestinians that are victims of the Palestinian dictatorship that literally dictating what they should think, what they should say. They have arrested activists that spoke against the Palestinian leadership and as well as in Hamas. So these activists, these even leaders, and I even John Kerry thought that Israel is an aggressor only because we are a strong country. So the fact that we are a strong country, that Israel is a regional superpower, shouldn't mean that Israel is an aggressor, because yeah, right, we have the Iron Dome, we have the ability to defend ourselves against rockets. But does that give permission to terrorists fire rockets at us? Imagine if only one rocket was fired on London. I'm sure that the UK would respond in such a way that these terrorists will never ever forget that, and perhaps even in a harsher way than Israel does. So the fact that they're blaming us for that, and that they're trying to find a solution in the same way that they're trying to solve the problem with the Taliban, that's just insane. It's insane.
What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about Israel? And to what extent do you believe that hostility to Israel comes down to deep-seated hatred or bias? Or is it more just down to misinformation and poor education in your experience?
I genuinely think that it's both. I think that the biggest misconception is that Israel is committing war crimes, and that Israel is being, treating the Palestinians in a bad way. I think that that's the biggest misconception, and obviously it's a broad topic, but I do think that it's something that a lot of people are thinking, and a lot of people are voicing that on social media, mainly because they have never been to Israel. They literally know nothing about Israel. They base their opinions on things that they read on social media, on things that they read on the news, and a lot of them are being against Israel because it's fashionable. If you're anti-Israel, you'll get likes. If you're anti-Israel, you'll be embraced by the mainstream media, because when you're the underdog, obviously you get more attention. And Israel is not an underdog. It's not the underdog anymore. We are a strong country, but it doesn't mean that we are wrong. And I get this question a lot. People are blaming Israel. People are attacking Israel, and I'm asking them this one question: have you ever been to Israel that you speak so boldly against it? And their answer is no. And then I invite them to come to Israel, because we have nothing to hide. Literally, come to Israel and see for yourself. How does Israel treat the Palestinians? They say that there is an apartheid. There are checkpoints for Palestinians. Hey, when I go to the territories, to Judea and Samaria, I also pass through the same checkpoint. So yes, we do have checkpoints because we want to prevent terrorist attacks on our people, and these checkpoints have successfully prevented a lot of these attacks. They say Israel built a wall to separate between Israelis and Palestinians. Yes, we did build a fence. It's mostly a fence and only in some parts it's a wall. But yes, we shouldn't apologize for that. We shouldn't apologize for wanting to prevent suicide bombing attacks, to prevent terrorist attacks, because unfortunately that's what our neighbors do. So yeah, I mean, I'm saying that Israel shouldn't apologize for building walls and fences to separate between the Palestinians and Israelis, because unfortunately we have neighbors, not all of them. We have radicals that want to massacre us, and they have done that. When we didn't have that, we had a lot of suicide bombing attacks, terrorist attacks on cities like Kfar Saba, Netanya. In 1929, there was the Hebron massacre that literally radicals stormed Jewish homes and massacred people. And so, yeah, we shouldn't apologize for wanting to safeguard our future here in this land.
So is your experience that when you make these points to people, generally speaking, they're receptive? What do you find creates the biggest blockages, the biggest resistance to these points that you're making?
Well, a lot of these activists, they are, well, when they are met with the facts, they're trying to hold on to one thing. Oh yeah, but it shouldn't give Israel the right to do that. It shouldn't give Israel the right to evacuate residents from Sheikh Jarrah and places like that. So, but again, it's holding on to one fact or one opinion while ignoring the rest of the story. So it's basically they zoom in and hold on to that one story, but sometimes you need to zoom out in order to understand everything. It's all about perception. So it's really easy to distort the truth about Israel, the truth in general, and to share and spread fake news, especially in the world of social media where everything is so quick, and people don't really want to spend a lot of time learning and understanding, because especially the Israeli-Palestinian conflict requires a lot of knowledge. And let me tell you this: I served in the Israeli army. I did hold my weapon and while facing Palestinians. And one time we were at that Palestinian village, placing a kind of a blockade on the entire village because a terrorist came from that village and he escaped to that village. So we imposed the blockades. We surrounded the village and we were searching for that terrorist. Obviously, the media portrayed it as Israel is blockading a Palestinian village. This is what we're dealing with. While in reality, that's what happened. And I was standing in one of these checkpoints, and these Palestinian children came. They were like 100 meters from us, and they started to yell at us, throw stones at us. But they were little children, so the rocks didn't even come near us. And I was holding my weapon fully geared, my helmet on, and I decided to put my weapon aside and to wave at them. I was like, I was thinking to myself, let's try to be creative. Let's see how they are going to react if I'll wave at them and put my weapon behind. And I did that. And believe it or not, they were shocked. They didn't know how to react because they were taught their whole lives from day one that when you see these soldiers with the olive colored uniform, know that they are monsters. They should be killed. They are killing you. They didn't expect me to wave at them. And I hope that this moment touched their hearts and maybe they would have a change of heart. And it's not the only story I get being active on social media. I do get messages from Palestinians telling me that, hey, I support Israel. I'm from Nablus. I'm from Hebron. I support Israel. And I asked them, hey, would you mind sending me a clip so I could post it and I could let the world know that there are Palestinians that know the truth about Israel. But all of them are messaging me and saying, hey, This is private between us. Don't expose me, my name, uh, because they are afraid. They know what will happen to them the minute they decided to stand up for what's right. So that's the truth about the unfortunate truth about the Palestinian society, that they radicalize their future generations. So that the conflict will never end, so that their children will hate, their children were terrorized, and it's a cycle that never ends unless there is a change in the education system, and they will stop teaching that Israel doesn't exist and wipe Israel off the map, off their maps at school and stuff like that.
Yeah. Or unless more and more people, you sort of get to a critical mass where enough people start to realize the cognitive dissonance between what they're being taught and the reality of Israel. And I have to say, I'm relatively hopeful about that, because I have faith that enough people out there are level headed, reasonable, and have their eyes open enough that they'll be able to realize the hypocrisy within the anti Israel movement and the lack of humanity within it. Um, and yeah, so I do feel positive about that, and I think at the end of the day, most human beings want the same things out of life, and are can be reasoned with, and that's my hope. And so I just think if eventually if we get to that level, especially with the rise of the internet, and what you're doing, what I try to do, what so many other people are trying to do, where it becomes almost inescapable, share to in terms of accessing content and learning the reality and the truth, should you wish to discover it. So lastly, Hananya, just before we finish, could you tell our audience what are your plans for the future? What's on your mind? What do you think is really needed in the world of Israel activism?
Well, my plans is to bring more peace to the Middle East, to our world. It's something that we need to see more of. And we saw 4 historic peace agreements that were brought by former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu together with Trump, and it's just amazing. They really changed the way peace is being made, and that the Palestinians are not necessarily the path to peace, but they will join, because it is important for me to state that as an Israeli Jew, I do not hate Palestinians. I did serve in the army. I did defend my country. I did fight Hamas, but I do not hate Arabs. I do not hate Muslims. I do not hate Palestinians. I consider them my neighbors. I love them, and I do want peace with them. You want to make peace with someone that you obviously don't hate, because if you hate, you just want to fuel the conflict and war. And that is my plan. I do want to stand up for my country as you know, and because if we don't do it, who will do it? If we don't tell the world the truth, who else will do it? Israel is this tiny country, one of the smallest countries in the world, and a lot of times we find ourselves explaining our actions to billions of people around the world, and it's not an easy task to do. That's why we need more and more and more. So I don't intend to stop standing up for Israel, and this is my plan: to make more friends around the Middle East, and to make sure that the future of Israel is secure.
Well, Hananya, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Thank you for all the work that you do, and yeah, just keep going, man, and look forward to welcoming you when I'm sure you come to London at some point in the future, as I know you're a bit of a world traveler. And let's do this again sometime.
I would love that. Thank you very much for this opportunity.